Plasma lances and molten shards streaked across the darkness like threads of burning silk, but the stealth corvette SSV Ghostweaver glided through the pandemonium like a rumor that had forgotten how to cast a shadow. Her chameleon hull drank in errant light from the sputtering accretion disks that ringed the hollow stars, and every flicker of gravimetric distortion was bled off by superconductive veins buried deep beneath her armor. On a tactical board 3 decks below the oblong bridge blister, Lieutenant Commander Rin Valera's heartbeat looked steadier than the external universe. "Enemy skirmish line, forming along the red eye rail," murmured Tactical Officer Tessa Quilly. Her voice was barely louder than the hush of the ship's circulation fans. 7 cruisers, 2 carriers, thrust vector 125 by 68. They're focused on the main Union battle screen. No sign of counter-stealth sweeps. Rin's eyes, pale gray in the holotable glow, stayed fixed on the projected wakes. "Hold us in their penumbra, 30 meters port, 200 aft. We match velocity and ride the slipstream." Helmsman Malik drew a careful breath. "If they vent fusion exhaust while we're in there." "That's the idea," Rin cut in, but she offered a thin smile to blunt the edge. "We need the wake turbulence to hide the injection signature." Across the battle space, titanic silhouettes traded siege bombardment in melting bursts of cobalt and violet. The Battle of Hollow Stars had only been raging for 27 minutes, but already 3 destroyers and a Union dreadnought floated as incandescent wreckage fresh-fueled for the mad gravity of the collapsed binaries that gave the region its name. Every sensor ping from a dying engine was warped by the local space-time-like words shouted through a whirlpool. Chaos was the only certainty, and Ghostweaver thrived on chaos. The Corvette's mission was simple on paper and monstrous in practice. Insert micropack holes into the enemy thruster wakes faster than any countermeasure could stop them. The weapon, officially the gravitational singularity disruptor, unofficially the pinprick, synthesized miniature event horizons barely 5 centimeters across, each one burning itself out in under 90 seconds. It was long enough for the singularity to surf an engine plume directly into a vessel's propulsion core. Once there, tidal forces did the rest. The process was silent, nearly invisible. A cruiser would be maneuvering 1 second, then fold inward like crumpling tin. Implosions registered on friendly scopes as blossom-shaped nulls, absence where mass had once brazenly defied the void. Tessa's gloved fingers danced. "Confirm lock on enemy cruiser Dawning Spear. Wake strength high, ready to sink pinprick." "On my mark," Rin said. A bead of sweat traced her temple, though the bridge was cold enough for breath to mist. 3, 2, 1, mark. Deep inside Ghostweaver, a magnetic rail hummed, and a black sphere no bigger than a child's marble flicked from containment into space. It vanished into Dawning Spear's blazing exhaust cone like a spark swallowed by a bonfire. For 11 agonizing seconds, nothing happened. Then a gravity pulse rippled outward, bending beams of light as if someone were kneading reality. The cruiser's hull convulsed inwards, and Dawning Spear collapsed into herself, a silver flower clenched shut by an invisible fist. A heartbeat later, condensation plumes from the implosion froze solid and drifted away as glitter. "Target neutralized," Tessa reported, voice small. Across open comms, enemy officers shouted fragmented orders. Sensors on multiple ships scrambled to reconcile data that refused to obey intuition. Rin pictured a CIC, brimming with officers staring at their screens, wondering how a vessel could vanish without a blast or contact, wondering whether the ghosts of hollow stars had chosen sides. "Time to next injection?" Rin asked. "Singularity tubes cooled in 35, engineering replied. "Plenty," she said. "We'll take the starboard carrier next." Silence, the ship's AI, filled her periphery as faint scrolling glyphs. She offered no words. Silence rarely did. Rin had always found that comforting. A stealth ship's best company was a mind that knew when not to speak. Malik nudged the yaw thrusters, bleeding only vapor. They nestled into the new wake while enemy fire hammered the Union vanguard 500,000 kilometers away. Right fusillades arced, each one a promise of ruin traveling at near light speed. Rin forced herself to ignore the screams occasionally bleeding through encrypted BattleNet. Ghost Weaver's job was to tip the scale before those screams became funeral sirens. The second singularity rode the carrier's vent like a shark on a tidal surge. The ship's bulkhead integrity gave way with a wobble that looked wrong to the eye, like a perspective trick revealing falseness in assumed reality. One moment the carrier existed. The next, she was a gaping sphere of nothing. Edges rhymed in superheated particulate. Hundreds of strike craft, mid-launch, were simply gone. On the Union flagship Resolute, Admiral Carews' startled expletive cut through wideband. "Weaver, is that you? Saints! Valera! Whatever you're doing, do more of it!" Rin allowed herself a grim chuckle. "Aye, sir, still dancing." Jubilant as the moment felt, tactical surprise never lasted. The enemy was Dominion Imperium fanatics, but not fools. The third injection missed. Dominion cruiser Iron Prayer dumped emergency coolant into her plasma exhaust as the singularity seeded. The sudden temperature drop dispersed propellant, starving the black hole of thrust-borne momentum. It fell behind, flashing out before real damage could accrue. 2 seconds later, a burst of wide-field neutrinos washed over Ghostweaver. "Active gravimetric sweep," Malik barked. "Stealth field holding," Tessa said, but her expression tightened. "They know something's out here." Rin flicked comms to Ghost Whisper mode, compressing her voice into a data stream buried beneath cosmic microwave hiss. "Suggestions?" Oreen, the chief engineer, chimed in from the reactor spine. "Our best bet is the debris belt around Holostar 8. Radiation soup will fry their sweeps. Downside, it'll fry us if we linger." "And our tubes need another calibration cycle," Tessa added. 30 kiloseconds max before lens degradation. Rin weighed options. One more enemy group annihilated might tilt the entire battle, but being cornered meant losing the only operational pinprick platform in the quadrant. "We'll dive into the belt," she decided. "Cool tubes, scrub signatures, and line up for a shot at their command ship." Tessa's eyes widened. "The Sovereign Gale? She's Fortress class. Her engine plume could scorch an asteroid field in half." "All the more to hide our payload," Rin said. Silence's glyphs cascaded like falling petals. "Y/N?" Rin touched Y. Ghostweaver banked into the shadow of Holostar 8, a collapsed white dwarf whose lopsided gravity field slung quarter-ton ice fragments in unpredictable arcs. Chunks of former worlds glimmered with trapped starlight, turning the belt into a spinning gallery of broken mirrors. Each collision birthed new shards, new glittering hazards. Ghostweaver threaded through on thrusters measured in millinewtons, the hull's polymer skin flexing to minimize radar cross-section. Inside, Orin coaxed coolant through banks of superconductive coils, and the Singularity Tube's ceramite lenses drank in liquid nitrogen until they glowed ultra-blue. Rin used the downtime to pace the bridge, letting the low hum of the drive soothe her. She had been a frontline pilot once, before Stealth Command. She remembered the arrogance of visible firepower. Micro-athletic holes were subtler, deadlier, and demanded a coldness she sometimes feared would stick to her soul long after the metals. But she thought of Union colonies evacuated under Dominion orbital bombardment, of civilians shivering in makeshift shelters carved into comet cores, and the chill inside her felt righteous. Malik interrupted. "Detecting broad-spectrum beacon bursts from Imperium ships. They're sweeping the belt with grav nets." "Plot intersections," Rin ordered. Blue arcs fanned across the holotable, converging not far behind their position. If those nets enveloped Ghostweaver, her mass shadow would light up like a flare. Tessa brought targeting overlays online. "We can shoot the buoys before the net forms," she said, "but we'll expose ourselves firing hard kill rounds." "Better idea," Rin murmured. The planned clarity hit her like crisp air. "We tagged the buoys." "With pinpricks?" Malik asks, startled. "They're engineless," Tessa argued. "Singularities would burn out before hitting them. Not if we tagged the ships towing them." Rin tapped 3 cruisers on the display. When the nets go taut, the drag increases thruster output. Plenty of plume. Tessa hesitated, then grinned. And they'll think they snared themselves. Authorization came from silence in a single glyph. Lethal probability optimum. Tubes armed. Ghostweaver reversed course, ghosting between ice cliffs toward the nearest tow cruiser. The ship loomed, bristling with sensor antennas like a techno-porcupine searching for invisible threats. Rin whispered, "Fire one." The Singularity darted down the ionized slipstream, and 2 breaths later, the cruiser folded, carrying the grav net with it. Tether lines snapped, anchors spun off into the black. Remaining buoys sparked confusion across enemy channels. Before the Imperium could parse what went wrong, a second and third cruiser vanished in identical implosions. The belt echoed with comms chatter, dissolving into panic. "Stealth scans disrupted," Tessa declared. "We remain unseen." Rin allowed herself 3 seconds of exhale. The hollow stars glared nearby, spherical voids where once bright giants had burned. She wondered who named them, some ancient cartographer staring into the abyss and recognizing family. A priority flag pinged the command net. Admiral Caru's voice strained. "Union line collapsing along Sector 4. Dominion flagship closing for decisive thrust. Bilera, if you've got any magic left, now's the hour." Rin looked at her crew. No one flinched. "Plot course for Sovereign Gale," she said. "Maximum stealth. We go in hot, come out ghosts." Malik set trajectory vectors through an aperture of glitter dust. Oren spooled reactors to battle silent. Minimal neutrino leakage, pulse modulated to mimic cosmic background. Every crew member's pulse synced to the hush. The Dominion flagship towered ahead like a cathedral carved from night. 10 kilometers of armored hull hosted 3 spinal lances, each capable of gutting a carrier. She was surrounded by a nimbus of gunships and gutted Union vessels caught in tractor webs. Her engine plume alone could roast a moon. Ghostweaver matched her velocity from a respectful 15 kilometers, invisible. "Injection window in 60 seconds, Tessa reported. "But the plume's turbulence is wild. We're going to have to approach closer than safety margins." "Understood." Malik tuned inertial dampers to hair street orth. Oren whispered prayers to whichever saint watched over engineers. Rin felt time stretch, each heartbeat a countdown. At 20 kilometers, a Corvette escort flashed sensors in depressive pulses. Rin's jaw tightened. "They're doing random grav sweeps," Malik said. "We're inside their minimum range. They'll blind themselves with their own drive glare," Rin hoped. "Hold course." 15 kilometers. 9. 5. The heat bloom on external plating soared, but the stealth matrix shifted frequencies, bleeding thermal radiation into microwaves, fed directly back toward the starless void. Ghostweaver became not cold, but statistically average, a median value in a chart no one wanted to read. "Target lock," Tessa whispered. As though the Imperium could eavesdrop on breath, Rin raised her hand, then froze as an alert screamed through internal channels. A Dominion interceptor, hull pitted, drifted from earlier carnage. No propulsion, just momentum. A collision trajectory with Ghostweaver's port bow blinked red. "Evasive?" Malik asked. "Negative," Rin snapped. "Any vector change in our injection path skews. Time to impact? 6 seconds. Deploy dorsal airfoil. Brush it." The Corvette didn't have wings, but retractable hull vanes used for microcourse corrections snapped outward, kissing the interceptor's flank. A hollow clang reverberated. Debris skittered off into forever. No explosions, no leaks. Silence kept them hidden. "Proceed," Rin commanded. She lowered her hand. "Mark!" The last Singularity launched, drinking in Sovereign Gale's raging exhaust. Microgravimetric telemetry pulsed. The black hole had gripped the plume. Accelerate. It would reach the flagship's propulsion core in 12 seconds. 11. 10. On the 3rd second, alarms whined. The flagship's rear sensors spiked, and thruster output dropped. Someone had realized an anomaly. Defensive grav shunts flared, but the Singularity had already cusp-blocked. Failsafes vented gigatons of plasma sideways. Space lit up like a newborn sun, even shielded instrumentation saturated white. "Pull us out!" Wren shouted. Malik slammed ventral thrusters, but the shockwave from decoupling plume fire hammered Ghostweaver nose on. Structural members cried in frequencies only mechanic ears could hear. The Corvette spun, inertial dampers lagging by cruel milliseconds that jerked vertebrae. "Forward cloak offline," Tessa said, coughing. Hull temperature spiking, but outside, greater violence unfolded. The Singularity breached Gale's reactor shielding. In the holotable feed, the enormous ship blossomed inward. Gravity bent, reflecting starlight in concentric rings. A fortress's heart caved to a point smaller than a bullet, then vanished. Escort frigates, still coupled by power conduits, tore apart like paper dolls sucked down a drain. Union channels erupted in cheers and disbelief. "Mission success," Silence announced. The AI's first spoken words in 24 hours. Its voice was a shimmer, neither male nor female, like wind sighing through copper. Yet Ghostweaver was not out. Fragment fields from the implosion shot toward them at appreciable fractions of light. Malik wrestled the yoke, but directional thrusters underperformed. Oren screamed over comms. "Port manifolds clogged with particulate." Rin felt distantly the cold reaching through her ribcage. So close, they'd stabbed a giant, only to die under falling blood. She keyed internal override. Silence. Execute. Drift. The drift protocol relinquished inertial control, setting the Corvette into ballistic freefall while powering every emitter down to sub-milliwatt trickles. Ghostweaver became just another fleck of debris, indistinguishable. Shards blasted past, some brushing hull in sparking glances but none fatal. The Corvette tumbled, powerless and unseen, through the remains of Sovereign Gale. Minutes passed, measured only by breathing. Eventually, stars steadied outside the viewports. Engineer Orn reported, "Thruster arrays clearing." Tessa restarted cloak sequencers. Systems came online one by one like timid animals after a storm. "Status?" Wren asked, voice hoarse. "Minor hull fractures," Orn said. 2 crew with concussions. Tubes destroyed, but payload expended. "Enemy fleet?" she dared. Tessa projected strategic overlays. Where the flagship had ruled, a void glared. Dominion formation sagged inward, command structure decapitated. Union task forces pressed, exploiting confusion. Hollow Star 8's corona now sparkled with wreckage and, perhaps, the first hints of retreat. A breath, then 2, until it dawned on them. They had survived. On channel wideband, Admiral Caru's voice sounded ragged with wonder. "Ghostweaver, we register you adrift. Confirm you're alive so I can buy my comms officer a drink." Rin leaned close to pick up. "Little bruise, sir, but alive. Recommend immediate exploitation. Imperium line is broken." "Agreed. Get yourselves home, Valera, and thank you." As comms quieted, Ghostweaver's bridge settled into reflective hush. Malik steered them toward a repair rendezvous, thrusters firing in gentle puffs. Behind them, microtech hole spent, harmless still rippled spacetime like fading ripples in water. They reminded Rin of the hollow stars themselves. Absence that defined the shape of things. Tessa removed her gloves, hands trembling, and stared at the smear of engine plasma across the viewport that might once have been Sovereign Gale. "Do you ever think about what it's like inside that implosion? If they feel it?" "Yes," Rin answered. Honesty weighed heavy, but necessary. "I think it's fast. And I think it's war." Tessa nodded, accepting or perhaps shelving the thought for later. Malik muttered a prayer for both sides, fingers brushing the charm on his collar. Silence manifested as text on the command console. Outcome probability revised. Union victory greater than 92%. Ren replied with a single word. "Understood." The Corvette sailed on, nearly invisible, threading between dust motes that glowed where starlight kissed them. In the wake of vanished titans, Ghostweaver left no contrail, no beacon. Only the quiet knowledge that something small, unseen and relentless had passed through. Somewhere distant, new stars would rise. Here, Amid the hollow stars, darkness had done its work, and for the moment at least, the light belonged to those who still endured.